topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
To Triversity Talk. I'm your host with the most, Wendy Stewart. Thank you so much for your patience tonight. We're having a little bit of what we call technical difficulties. I got to tell you, this streaming thing is still not 100% perfect, but you know what? We solved what was going on, and we're going to have a great show for you. I have a couple of things I want to share with our audience tonight. We're having the Black Bear Film Festival in Milford, Pennsylvania, which is where, of course, Triversity is located. And I'd love to tell you that Sunday from 11 to 4 is going to be our whole block of LGBTQ films. And hoping that some of the filmmakers will be there, but it will be at our center. So please, if you are in upstate New York, or even if you're in New York City and you feel like taking a nice full drive, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, the Black Bear Film Festival will be running the LGBTQ films at Triversity Center from 11 until 4. And you know what else? We've got popcorn. Okay. What more could we do for you? So I hope I get to see some of you there. Two of my friends have films that we're showing. Damian Byrne with Lavender Outlaws and Stephen Love Menendez, who produced The Queens of Stonewall, and the other films are all really terrific. So I hope I get to see your faces there. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight because I want to get right to our guest. I found our guest tonight at an award ceremony we were doing in Milford, Pennsylvania. He came as the author who was promoting his new book called Passionate Outliers, Gay Writers and Allies and Their Work. Here's the cover. Okay. And he interviews some of the most amazing historical LGBTQ writers and their allies in this book. And the essays and the interviews, just so interesting. So I was thrilled to get our guest on the show. I want to tell you a little bit more about him before I tell you his name. In his book, Passionate Outliers, he's compiled thought-provoking collections of interviews with, of course, LGBTQ writers and allies, and from the pre-Stonewall to now, which is, you know, things have changed so much, and I really want to get into that conversation tonight. And he documents the importance of queer history and the literary minds who captured it in books. So as far as I know, there is not one book that exists that's like this. A little bit more about Frank. He is a queer rights reporter, HIV expert, prevention advocate. He's written articles, essays, and I have to tell you, he is a world-class interviewer. He pulls things out of people that I'm like, how did he get them to say that? So without further ado, Passionate Outlier, Frank Pizzoli.
Hi, Wendy. It's really great to be here.
Well, it's
Thank
really
you for the opportunity.
Considering I didn't have you for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, I'm so excited to do this interview. I have to get him on air. And you know what? I'm tenacious, and so are you. And here we are tonight. I first want to tell you how much I enjoyed your book. Some of the people, if not all of them, they all had their own spin, their own take on LGBTQ history and literature. And I want to start this interview out by telling people a little something that I know about you that I think is kind of funny. Frank started when he was 10 years old, his own newspaper. It was called the Daily Blab. And he would think of a question on the day with information from the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that would be the question that would go out to people. Let's take it from the top. How did this all come about for you? That's so great, by the way.
Well, we were a newspaper reading family and we were a book loving family. And so the printed word was always held in high regard in my house. And having my own newspaper, I thought of, I would sit with my family, often my father, before or maybe after dinner, and we would pull apart the newspaper. The A section with all the hot news, the B section with the news feature, the sports section, the classifieds, the funnies, and everybody. That the newspaper was an important item in our house, just like a refrigerator and a stove in our kitchen.
I
And
love
we shared.
you know that that's not typical, right? I mean, usually, back in the day, Dad would come home and read the paper, and all the sharing that went on in your house, which was, I know, the catalyst for who you are, is such a wonderful thing that was important to your family.
Yes, that was important. My family was able to engage itself in politics from my grandfather, my father's father, held elected office and was let's say, a political player in the region from a very young age. And he was an elected tax collector and school director, helped establish the local school system when education became compulsory in 1920 in Pennsylvania.
Amazing.
And then his oldest son was a school director and a tax collector, as was my father, a tax collector. And the family continued that tradition. So being wired in was always part of the process. Now, we were not the dork family. We had a family life like any other.
Right.
But yeah, that was the foundation of it all. Find out what's going on and tell people.
Wow. How did that work out with your classmates and things growing up? Because surely you knew more than everybody else.
Well, there were periods of time when I'm not sure. I look back and I realize I may not have been acting as a child at that point. I've joked about myself saying, I don't know if I was ever a child.
I
Um,
have
in,
to
in,
say, like, after reading about you, I said, "Oh, he was never a child." I totally get it now. But you know what? How wonderful you were! Totally supported in this amazing family. And as a gay man, how did your family deal with that? I'm curious.
oh, well, it was a roller coaster, but it was not a severe roller coaster,
A roller coaster.
as some people have experienced. It was a normal developmental timeline of I think my parents always knew that I was struggling with something, figured it out. Um, I went through periods of I don't want to say coldness by any means, but there were tensions. And
Tensions.
and my father left when I was 25 years old, and by the time as young as I was, we had established a relationship of kind of like two guys. You're always father son. That
Yeah.
never changes. But we had gotten to a point where I think he looked at me and was proud and said, "You are who you are, and you're
Absolutely.
going to do what you're going to do." And I think by then, his efforts to help me. When you're young, you sort of see that maybe for 5 minutes as an interference. And I realized by that time,
Right.
it's not. He's just loving me and trying to be concerned like any parent would.
It
And I
does.
always regretted that he left so early and we could have had that time together and didn't. But such is life.
But he, again, I'm sure would have been incredibly proud after reading all the publications that you wrote for. Your impact in gay literature is really amazing. After reading the things that you've done, I thought to myself, they should send Frank around to every college in the country, because one of the things we struggle with now is gay history. We have a wonderful person on our board that you met, Kit, who got the award when you came to Pennsylvania that night. Kit, at such a young age, is so impressive what he knows. It's amazing to me, and grasps it. But so many young people don't really know the history. And my take on all of this, your book is important. Okay, this should be really required reading in colleges. It absolutely should be. The people that you chose to interview and the content that they had to say, absolutely so interesting. I didn't know, I knew some of the names in this book. I didn't know all of them. And most of the interview material that you presented, I did not know any of. And it was really interesting. And in my own head, I kept thinking about how it relates to now. So this was pre-Stonewall, some of your interviews. And then there were ones that were after Stonewall. And then, of course, in between, we had the AIDS epidemic. How did this color your interviews?
Well, I'll start with something that's at the end of the introduction you generously referred to, because I think that it really underscores, if you ask the question, what was he trying to do? I think this will explain my goal. And I really firmly believe this. If, as writers and activists and advocates, we stand on the shoulders of all those who came before us, it is our first responsibility to know who they were in their own words, literally, period. And so presented here are the interviews in that fashion. Much of pre-Stonewall, Stonewall, and post-Stonewall is covered from the perspective of these people lived through it. And I wanted to get their perceptions, contemporaneous perceptions that they had going on, because as we all know, reflection changes what we think about our own life experiences. And I wanted to give them that opportunity. The other book, and you'll see it in the afterword, is Christopher Bram, who generously wrote the afterword, said, to my surprise, but to my delight, that it was a good companion book to his book, Eminent Outlaws, Gay Writers Who Changed America, because he covered in a much more in-depth way than I did, not interviews, but actual more global histories. So the two together work really well.
They would definitely complement each other. I have to say, though, your interviews were very, very much in depth. Of everyone that you interviewed here, I just got a very strong feeling from you that Edmund White made an incredible impression on you. I have to tell you, he made an incredible impression on me with some of the things that he said. He said something like he had slept with 500 men.
He had said that by the time he was 16 years old, he had calculated that he had slept. And you know, his last book about the loves of his life is just unbridled in describing probably as much as he could remember, although that would fill an ocean and there'd still be water left over.
Right.
The man was incredible, and yes, an influence on me because he was so encouraging.
Which is really fantastic. When you first met him, was to put a book like this together, you obviously, I don't know if you knew some of these writers before, or you just started to reach out because you had a message that you wanted to bring forth in your book. What was your relationship with Edmund White?
Well, that's an interesting place to start. I knew of most of the writers that were in the book. Some I knew because they were having their first or a noteworthy release. But I had a friend in Key West, Edmund, generally at that time in his life, went down every January or so for a vacation. I did not know that at the time. I emailed my friend and mentioned coincidentally in conversation that I wanted to interview Edmund White very much. And he said, to my surprise, "Oh, I'm having dinner with him tomorrow night. Would you like me to intervene?" Well, absolutely. When something like that falls in your lap, put it in your pocket. So um, he was communicated back through an email. Here's what impressed me the most, and it was most noteworthy. All lowercase, about 2.5 sentences. Punctuation, you would have to go to a special class, to learn how to correct. And yeah, I'm really busy. I won't be back till next week. Wait till then. Contact me then. Here's my address, my phone number. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Great writer's resume, by the way. And that was it. So, in my mind, that would be, to exaggerate the point, that would be like someone sending a note to William Shakespeare and him returning it with a misspelled word and poor punctuation.
No,
And
exactly.
yeah, exactly. And so I thought, oh, that is amazing. And the relationship was that warm throughout our time.
How many times did you interview him throughout your time?
Formally 3 times, 2 upon the release of specific books, and once, and this was a real joy. The Violet Quill was a group of 7 writers. They met in New York.
Ask you about the Violet Quill, but there were only 3 members left at the time when you wrote the book.
Yes, at the time I did the interview, and now it's published in the book, there were only 3 that were alive. Now, by the time the book actually came out, there are only 1, Andrew Holleran.
Right.
Very, very soon to the release, Felice Picano left us, and then, of course, June 3rd, Edmund White left us. I do have that as a recording. Because that's how we made it so I could be hands-free, mind-free to interview them. And it's about 10,000 words of 30,000 words, which is still intact and usable.
Amazing. And again, if you didn't publish this book, we're losing these people. And I feel if we don't get it on paper, the stories that come back will be inaccurate and many stories will be forgotten. All right. These books are a secret weapon to now. We're watching history being rewritten. Now we hear things in the news and things that are said that you want to wave your hand and say, no, that's not true at all. That's not what happened at all. So by you coming out with a book like this, you've taken and you've shown a light on people that were so relevant for the LGBTQ movement. So thank you for that.
It was an interesting process to demystify some of the bold-faced names that you might read on page 6, or that you might see on a talk show, or on a program like yours that we're doing tonight. I also included books and authors who covered individuals who are just living their life. Equality, what does it mean to you? Yes, it has a couple of bold-faced names in it, but most of the individuals involved there are everyday people who are not advocates, not activists. They're people living their life. And we wanted to know the author. One of them, he passed away a couple of years ago. He wanted to include them and let everybody know what their life was like. And he asked a lot of advocates, why are you an advocate? And it was a very, very well written, not a lot of noise around it, but it was a very, very grounding experience to read, because you realize that we're like anybody else.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That was going to be my question for you. What makes you such an advocate? What put you on the path for advocacy?
Well, I certainly, the family background that I referred to.
Yeah.
um, instilled in me, the one story that always got told, and I say this with humility. My grandfather it's 1925, and there's a an unusually warm winter, and it didn't need any coal. I come from the anthracite coal region, and so miners were out of work, and so he was the kind of guy that would start a soup kitchen to make sure they had something to eat. And then, oh, why don't you go and build a sports field over here on a piece of land I'm going to donate, so that you can be busy and be occupied. I use that example, and that's a big example there. But on a day-to-day
Incredible
basis,
example, pretty incredible
he,
example.
yeah, he might. His children, my father and his daughters in particular, my Aunt Edith was a role model. When they would look out into the world, if there was a problem and they knew they could solve it, they just felt like, why wouldn't I walk over there and solve that problem?
Right. Well, it's called being accountable and feeling that you have a responsibility to the greater good, right? If I can do something about it, I want to do something about it. Now, what I know you wrote for Pause magazine, and I'll share this with you. When Pause first came out, I was very involved and on the board of POWERS, Pet Owners with AIDS Resource Service. We took care of the pets of anyone that had HIV or AIDS. So anytime a publication came out, we would get it. And I remember the very first issue of Pause. It did not sit well with me. And I'll tell you why. There were ads in there to be buying up people's life insurance. And I thought, wow. And I'm just giving you my perception. That's really harsh.
Yes, and as your history, you've relayed that history very well. They were probably one of the first advertisers
They
to
were.
come in, because that was the reality. I mean, it's not like there weren't viatical settlements before then, but now you had a specific demographic, where you could actually organize and brand around it. If I remember our history correctly, and maybe you do too, at one point in that magazine, I think we read that Sean Struve cashed in a $50,000 life insurance policy to help him start that magazine, and it was done on a viatical basis.
I did not. I don't remember reading that, but I mean, Sean's been an amazing advocate, activist, all of it. And of course, I read his book, Body Counts, and knew every name that he mentioned in there. But I don't remember that. That is really something. I just remember the ads for life insurance policies. And it upset me. It also upset me that, and you remember what the time was like. Nobody was doing anything. We had the gay men's health crisis at the time was really small, and we were dealing with this disease we called GRID, but no one was doing anything, and our administration at the time did absolutely nothing. Silence really did equal death.
It certainly did. You've drawn a circle around that very, very effectively. Imagine that something that deadly was happening to you,
Right.
and nobody wanted to hear about it.
Nobody wanted to hear about it because it was, as far as they knew, initially gay men, people of color, and I felt then, and I still felt now, they could have done something to get things under control, but nothing was done. And then it was raging. And then the first wave, the second wave. I still have 3 phone books, and I save them, and they're hard for me to deal with. I don't open them, but they're here in my house because I hang on to that. I remember what that was like.
You touched a chord. I don't know if you could feel that through the airwaves when you said phone book. I cannot cross a person's name out in the phone book who died of AIDS.
Right.
And I have a box that I started to put memorials in, obituaries.
All the obits and memorials.
From people, and you kind of read them. Was involved with a lot of the funerals and arrangements and memorials, I would just throw them in a box, and things from their church and from the families that would be mementos. And the only time I can open that box is to maybe put another one in.
But you can't look
I've
at it.
tried a couple of times. I can't open it and pull them all out and read them. I may never do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't read. I
But
can't read their names either. It's tucked away. However, it's such a big part of who you are, Frank. I have to believe that it had to be playing like a film in your head when you were talking about this with the people that you interviewed, because they all remember what it was like too.
Oh, they most certainly did. And you mentioned gay men's health crisis back here, and this went on all over the country. They
Absolutely.
became the model. Your efforts there became the model with gay men's health crisis, and the pet services that you mentioned were adopted elsewhere. So you've played a role in putting ideas out there that you planted seeds, and they've grown.
Right.
You know,
That's
a
what we
lot of the
try.
community. Yeah, a lot of the communities had programs that were already in operation 3, 4, and 5 years with local funding until the Ryan White Act
Right.
was finally passed, and that's an interesting history there. Too long for this show, but essentially, what happened, if you were an insider like you were or I were, I mean, my impression was, without saying so, they basically said, here, please come and take this money. We don't have to invent anything. You've already invented it. What we need to do is now fund it. I
Yeah.
look back now. Yeah, I look back now, and I don't want to say I'm glad it happened that way, but golly gee, I guess we got in on the ground floor, and that's why those services were so effective when they finally were funded, because the people who were dying from the disease had a hand in shaping the agencies and the services.
And absolutely. Okay, but we'll fast forward to now, though. You know, I'm going back to your book. Interviewing these people gives a young person a sense of what things were like in that time. I feel a lot of the kids now, and if you do HIV advocacy work, you're privy to this information. They feel like they can just do PrEP and everything's hunky dory and it's going to be just fine. And I don't know how do you raise awareness when a person didn't experience what we experienced? Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost like we and the people that you interviewed in this book, we were in this parallel universe. What do
Yeah,
we
I mean,
find?
when you mention young people today having to negotiate and navigate, I
Yeah,
mean, time does not stand still. And so when PrEP first came out, certainly everybody jumped up and down. The immediate educational step that provoked, okay, in our joy over this can be stopped. We can stop the spread of the HIV virus. Um, we'd have to sit down and explain to people, okay, someone taking this or you taking it, okay, you're okay now with HIV, but there's a whole other list of sexually transmitted viruses and organisms, and you don't want those. They can still have a very permanent and prominent effect. So the basic game, so to speak, if I can use that word,
yeah,
the basic interaction has not changed. We want to create environments in which people can have healthy attitudes towards sex, be fully informed about sex, but it doesn't mean you have to do everything you read in the pamphlet in one day, or
right.
that you ever have to do it. That being sexually positive also includes taking care of yourself. It just doesn't, it means more, it doesn't mean you're a slut and you'll do anything anytime with anybody. Having a positive attitude towards sex says, yeah, it's fun. It can be between consenting adults.
Exactly.
It can be as often as I want. The point is, it has to be as medically safe as possible.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't talk about any of that before AIDS, So golly gee, if you were involved like you and I were, that's not a tough one to wrap your brain around. We're
Right.
going to have to start talking. American culture didn't talk about sex when
Not even,
AIDS hit.
not even a little bit. And Evan White, and by the time he was 16, had 500 partners. And I read that, I was like, whoa, I had no idea what things were like then, right? And I was like, wow, people could do that. They could do that and live to tell about it. But that's a huge thing, you know, they could live to tell about it. And you're right. Now there's all kinds of other stuff out there. And it's certainly gotten very complicated. And then if you roll in legalities now, like the Zero Project that Sean started, and I had Carrie Thomas on this show, who was incarcerated because his partner said that he got HIV from Carrie because Carrie did not disclose his status. It makes you realize in certain states that anyone can set you up and point a finger. And in certain states, you can go to jail. That's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Oh yeah, I mean and a particular sort of theme that Sean and I talk about with each other, but in situations like right now, I think we're both pretty well convinced that the history, um, certainly Sarah Schulman's history, monumental task that belongs in every library. There's another part of the history, and that is us as gay men. I can't speak, and my life experiences are only that. We need to talk about what we did not do during those years that helped the virus spread, and all those things we did that helped the virus not spread.
Yeah.
That's a little difficult while you're trying to take care of people. You're being rejected by your family.
Sure.
Bodies are being refused at funeral homes. They're people who wear spacesuits. Yeah.
Door in the hospital because nursing staff didn't even want to go in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that history will come. That history will come about. Time is the great enabler. And when I say that, I mean that it enables you to look back and more clearly see, not in the heat of the moment, what actually happened there? What were the dynamics? What can we learn from that so that this doesn't happen again, or at least not happen in the same way? And given in the world we live in, who knows what's coming next?
Well, so I'm going to back on what you just said. Given in the world that we're in, and having come out of this COVID, which that was another thing. You couldn't find a way to contain that early on in the game, and it hit everywhere at the same time in the world, right? AIDS was a rollout. It hit and then it spread. COVID was just like, boom, it's coming, and then it was there. And people were getting sick all over the place. I guess I wonder, do we learn? Do we learn from our culture? Do we learn from our mistakes? Or is this just who we are as human beings, And at the end of the day, do we all end up paying a price?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have learned. My sense is my involvement here with the local community center, and I'll be at Penn State University next week. You mentioned, college campuses. There has been some interest in it. I think there is a beginning interest now, and let's go back and look and hear from people like you, like Sean, like myself, to say what did happen. The baseline is, first we need to know facts and events and times and dates. It's not a quiz. You don't pass or fail that. But like when you go to see a historical movie, you want to sort of immerse yourself in what was going on then, so you can try to understand yourself today. And that's
really well put, right? Like what was going on then that created who I am today. But here is the boomerang. You reach a point as an adult, and you have an idea who you are, right? And you're working in society, and you're trying as an advocate or an activist to do your best work. And then all of a sudden, a political administration comes in that is like, you're like, say what? What are they doing? They're cutting here, they're cutting there, they're attacking transgender people. All of a sudden, every single thing that you fought for, and you talked earlier about equality, right? We got marriage equality, things were like looking amazing. And now we're dealing with now.
Our vigilance can never be asleep.
Thank you.
We must, eternal vigilance is not just for, political opponents. Right now, I think we're in a situation where that makes me want to say about 25 different things. One of them is anybody who now can't understand why the level of addiction, alcoholism, and basically mental health problems are 20 to 25% higher in my community when compared with heterosexual society. Well, think about that. When you wake up tomorrow, you can't be heterosexual. There's something wrong with you. You can be refused services. You're not going to be visible anymore. And then I'll check with you in a year or 2 or 5 if you're still with us, and then we'll see how your mental health is doing.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. And you know what? You're the first person. I have friends that do put stuff like that on Facebook, but you're the first person that really came out and articulated this. Imagine, I have friends that are terrified. I have transgender friends that are terrified for obvious reasons. Okay, we're in crazy time right now where anything could happen, and all the things that we fought for could be challenged, okay, because it's a bit lawless right now, right? Supreme Court judges and this administration, they say stuff, they throw stuff out there, and then the next thing you know, it's happening. And then you hear, well, there's this lawsuit, that lawsuit, there's 1,000,001 lawsuits, but the stuff is still happening. And it's very, very frightening. And I thank you for calling out about mentally what is doing to people. And you know what I'm going to add into that is we came out of COVID and now we have this, right? And I think for human beings, it's just too much. I do.
Well, and if you want to, I tried to provide a sense of hope. I've gotten myself involved with Chelsea Community News, which is Scott Stifler there, and he has very bravely started LGBTQ Community News.nyc. It's launched, and I did a series of stories that are there. Some of them are already posted, and we basically I went around.
I read one.
Yes, and I basically sampled the national organizations. I sampled people like yourself, like Sean, street level people. And the series is basically the state of queer politics, what is to be done.
Right.
And in the first one, it's Anne Christine Tedeschi, who's there in Brooklyn, who has been very involved with Project, taking apart and explaining Project 2025. And the national organizations all participated. Those two parts of the story are up. In a day or two, the next third and last installment of the story will go, but it gives people a sense of what's going on right now in the organizations. What can we do as individuals and as national organizations to meet this moment as we always have, and I am certain we will this time too.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I am not a person that sees the glass half empty by any stretch, but these times are extremely challenging. And I fear for a lot of the young people. Like our organization, Triversity, we have a wonderful teen group, right? But these are the kids that are going to, quote unquote, inherit the earth. And they've got to get through high school. And they've got to get through high school in one place with all of this kind of stuff going on. And again, that's why I asked you, is your family accepting that you came out as gay? Because remember how tumultuous, right, those high school years are, and you're questioning your sexuality, you're questioning a lot of things. Now more than ever, I feel people need to be supported.
No, absolutely. And maybe that's a good place for us to draw the circle around tonight's podcast. When I was there in Milford and we were having those discussions that night at the benefit, that pulled it together for me. Those comments that were received in the room
I love it.
work. I woke up the next morning and I sat down and I said, okay, here it is in black and white. We have a generation or two of people that were born into gay straight alliances in their school, born into books in their library, born into, men and women marry each other. There are same-sex couples. So now we need to help them stay strong and help them remain equipped, because our life experiences were different than theirs, and they're going to need our help.
I completely agree with you, and I love the way you're looking at this whole issue. Frank, we're down to the last couple of minutes. I don't know where the time goes, so real quick. So in all those interviews, do you have, they were all wonderful and different and incredible quotes. Do you have anybody that stands out really in your mind that really affects how you perceive things?
John Recchi, in particular.
Okay.
I mean, each and every person there was amazing. Sally Quintu, who she wrote about Eleanor Roosevelt as First Lady having an affair with Hicks, an Associated Press reporter, and she wrote a book that included all of that. And I basically said to her, there are how many books about Roosevelt and about Eleanor and about Lincoln and about some of our big names in our own history, but what made you think that we needed one more? And she was very, very clear, and she said, I really just could not rest with the fact that the last major book written, the author decided to leave that part out. You don't get to leave parts out of history, because she thought it was disgusting. She didn't agree with it. She thought it was unsavory. And I just needed to do this. I needed to do this. And I'm finding there are a lot of people who are to the point where, all right, we need to do something.
Yeah.
This will not stand. This will not stand, and we must stay together and link arms.
Oh, absolutely. I want to tell people where they can get Passionate Outlier.
Passionate Outlier is available through Rebel, Satori, Satori Press, and also through Amazon and Barnes and Noble. If you type in my name and Passionate Outlet, you will, I'm happy to tell you will see a number of outlets where you can find it in addition to the publisher. Although we would appreciate it if you buy it from the publisher.
Right. And I was lucky enough to meet you in person and have you sign my book, which meant so much to me. Thank you for all of the work that you're doing. And where people can read your latest writing is in, what is it, Chelsea Community News? Please repeat that for me.
Chelsea Community News, okay. And LGBTQ communitynews.nyc.
Thank you for everything that you're doing. And are you working on another book? I have to know.
Yes, I have been courted with the suggestion and recommendations that I do a memoir. I'm looking at that, and I'm figuring out in my own head how would I actually put that together. I would like to do something that is not linear, meaning I won't start with my third grade report card and work your way through up until today. I'd like to go about it in a little different way that I think would make for an interesting story.
Yep. But you also have to include the fact that you started your own newspaper at 10 years of age. I totally love that. I always like to take a picture of my guests before we say goodbye, to say cheese.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Frank, thank you so much. I am so grateful to have gotten you on Diversity Talk. I'm grateful that we met in Milford, which is really an amazing place. We have people doing extraordinary things there, and thank you being there that night, for being the wind beneath the wings of the kids that got those awards. You are an influencer.
Well, and so are you, and thank you for all of your good work too. That was quite an amazing weekend.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. And don't forget to check out our LGBTQ films this Sunday at the Black Bear Film Festival at the Triversity Center on Hartford Street. Good night, everybody.